The event coordinator noticed the 2 vacant chairs in the front row and looked back at me. "These are still being held for your parents," she said. I forced a smile that never reached my eyes. Not anymore. All around, cameras drifted above a crowd of beaming families. Classmates embraced their mothers. Fathers angled their phones to capture every moment. Somewhere behind me, laughter erupted as 3 generations crammed together for a photo. My phone buzzed. "Mom, send pics later, have fun." That was the entire message. No apology, no wish they could be there. Just a handful of words that stung worse than silence would have. 2 days before, she'd looked me dead in the eye and said, "Ethan's ski trip can't be rescheduled, Mila. Your ceremony happens all the time." "It happens once," I'd corrected her quietly. She only shrugged. "You'll have graduation too." As if earning the right to wear my first white coat after years of grueling medical school was something you could simply swap out for another date. I tucked my phone away before anyone could notice my hands trembling. Then a familiar voice called my name. Dr. Raymond Foster, the physician who'd mentored me since my very first clinical rotation, appeared beside me. He glanced toward the empty seats, then back at me, and he didn't need to ask where my parents were. He already knew. Without missing a beat, he turned to an older couple standing nearby. "Mom, Dad," he said gently, "could you do me a favor?" I blinked, caught off guard. His parents traded a quick look before stepping closer. Dr. Foster turned to me with a soft smile. Nobody should start a day like this staring at empty chairs. I immediately protested that I couldn't ask that of them. "You're not asking," his mother said warmly. "We're offering." His father grinned, "And we'd consider it an honor." For the first time that morning, the tightness in my chest eased enough for me to breathe. I thanked them quietly as they took the seats meant for people who had chosen not to come. The lights dimmed and students began forming lines backstage, straightening their white coats one last time before the procession began. Excited chatter buzzed around me. "My whole family's here." My grandparents drove 6 hours. My little sister made me a poster. I smiled politely at everyone, careful never to mention that my parents had decided a luxury ski trip with my older brother mattered more than this. It wasn't even a matter of money. That had been their excuse for weeks. Flights cost too much. Hotels weren't in the budget. Then Ethan proposed a last-minute ski getaway, and suddenly the budget was no longer an issue. I'd realized long before the ceremony that it was never about money. It was about priorities, and I simply wasn't one of them. Dr. Foster placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "You earned this day," he said. "Don't let someone else's choice take it from you." Before I could respond, 2 staff members approached the front row, one holding a clipboard, the other murmuring into a headset. She leaned toward Dr. Foster's parents. "Just confirming, the 2 of you will stay seated with Ms. Chen through the entire ceremony?" Dr. Foster frowned slightly. "Yes? Is there a reason?" The staffer only smiled politely, checked something off on her clipboard, spoke quietly into her mic, and walked off without explanation. I watched her vanish behind the curtain, unsettled by how deliberate that exchange had felt. I had no idea it was the first sign that everything was about to change. Backstage, the excitement kept building as each row of students prepared to walk out. My classmate Jasmine adjusted her coat and beamed. "My dad flew in from Seattle. He's never missed a single milestone." "That's wonderful," I said, and I meant it. She glanced my way. "What about your parents? I thought you said they were coming." I hesitated only a second. Something else came up. Before she could press further, someone called her away for a group photo, and I was relieved for the interruption. Standing there, memories surfaced whether I wanted them or not. The time my parents drove 8 hours through a snowstorm just to catch Ethan's regional ski race, the text my mother sent when I won an undergraduate research award. "Congrats! Tell us about it at dinner next week." There was always something bigger going on. Medical school hadn't changed that pattern. When I'd invited them to today's ceremony, my father had sighed over the phone about flights and hotels being too much right now. 3 weeks later, Ethan posted a photo of brand new ski gear, captioned "Family Vacation Loading." The money had never been the real obstacle. The choices were. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts, and Dr. Foster's parents stepped into the dressing room. His mother held out a small handkerchief stitched with blue flowers. I always keep a spare, she said warmly. Happy tears tend to show up at ceremonies like this. His father chuckled, and if they don't, we'll pretend we didn't notice. I laughed for the first time all morning. Thank you, I said softly. You barely know me. His mother squeezed my hand. We know enough. A production assistant popped in with a camera. Ms. Chen, could I grab a quick photo of you with your guests? Sure, I said, assuming it was just for the live stream. She snapped a few shots, thanked us, and rushed off without further comment. Minutes later, yet another staffer approached, headset pressed to her ear, and spoke quietly to Dr. Foster's parents. Please make sure the two of you remain seated until the very end. The music swelled as the ceremony began. Rows of students filed in, while hundreds of relatives rose in applause. My heart hammered under my white coat as I spotted Dr. Foster's parents in the front row. The instant they caught my eye, they jumped up, waving enthusiastically. That's our future doctor, Mr. Foster shouted, and the people around them laughed and clapped even harder. One by one, my classmates crossed the stage to cheers from their families. When my turn came, my name rang out, Mila Chen, and the applause that followed genuinely surprised me. Faculty smiled as I received my white coat, and I caught Dr. Foster nodding proudly from the wings. His parents were on their feet again, cheering with such real joy that it softened the sting of the empty seats beside them. High above, television cameras panned across the ceremony and lingered on the smiling couple celebrating me. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Ethan was laughing with friends outside a ski lodge while my parents lunched on a sunny patio overlooking the slopes. My mother's phone buzzed twice. Are you watching Mila on TV? Then another. Turn on the live stream. She glanced at the screen, silenced it, and slid the phone back into her pocket. We'll catch up later, she said. Today's Ethan's trip. Back in the auditorium, once the last student had received their coat, the host returned to the podium instead of wrapping things up. Before we close today's program, she announced, we have one more presentation. The room went quiet. This year, a national committee reviewed nominations from hospitals, physicians, and community organizations nationwide. One graduate has been chosen for exceptional service to underserved communities. I frowned along with everyone else. I didn't know there was another award, someone whispered nearby. Neither did I whispered back. A producer hurried to the front row and spoke quietly to Dr. Foster's parents. Would you come with me, please? They exchanged a confused glance before following her toward the stage. The host opened an envelope. The recipient will also receive a community impact grant of, she paused for effect, $750,000. For a moment, the entire room fell silent. I stared at the stage, certain I'd misheard. $750,000, I echoed under my breath. The host smiled directly at me. Mila Chen, would you join us up here? My legs barely cooperated as I walked forward, the applause swelling louder with every step. Dr. Foster stood near the podium with the look of someone who'd been sitting on an impossible secret. As I reached the microphone, the producer gently brought Dr. Foster's parents up to stand beside me. We'd also like to recognize the people who've supported today's recipient, the host said. Mrs. Foster shook her head with a humble smile and leaned into the mic. We should clarify, we're not Mila's biological parents. The room grew even quieter. We're Dr. Foster's parents, Mr. Foster added. When we found out she'd be sitting alone today, we were honored to fill those seats. I pressed a hand to my mouth, unable to hold back tears. Mrs. Foster squeezed my hand. Nobody should celebrate a day like this by themselves. The cameras caught every second, and within minutes, viewers watching online were all asking the same thing. Where were her actual parents? Classmates posted congratulatory photos, relatives shared clips, and neighbors back home recognized our family name and started piecing it together. At the resort, my mother's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Dozens of texts, missed calls from relatives, news alerts with my name attached. A cousin sent a link. Please tell me this isn't why you skipped her ceremony. My father pulled up the live stream replay, and the first thing he saw was Dr. Foster's parents standing proudly beside me on national television. They think those are her parents, he muttered. No, my mother said quietly, already reaching for her phone. Call Mila, now. By the time the ceremony wrapped, my phone showed more than 30 missed calls from the two of them. I didn't answer. I was still surrounded by classmates, faculty, and reporters asking about the award. Hours later, after the segment aired on local news and spread online, I finally sat down in the quiet of the hospital courtyard. My phone lit up again. 91 missed calls. Before I could decide what to do, it started ringing once more. I looked down and saw my mother's name flashing across the screen again. This time, I answered. Before I could speak, she jumped in. Mila, people are saying awful things about us. Everyone thinks we abandoned you. I closed my eyes briefly. You did. Silence. Then my father's voice came on the line. We had no idea any of this would happen. I know, I said evenly. That's not why it hurts. Neither of them responded. You skipped the ceremony because you didn't think it mattered. They had nothing to say to that. A few minutes later, Dr. Foster found me sitting outside the auditorium and handed me a folder with the official award paperwork. I suppose I owe you an explanation, he said with a small smile. He told me that months earlier, after watching me organize free clinics, weekend health screenings, and outreach programs for underserved communities on top of a full medical school course load, he'd quietly nominated me for the National Community Impact Award. He hadn't done it alone. Hospitals where I'd volunteered, supervising physicians, and community organizations had all sent letters saying the same thing, that I consistently showed up for people who had nowhere else to turn. The committee had chosen me unanimously. The producers wanted it to be a surprise, he explained, and they also wanted to honor the people supporting you from the audience. They assumed that would be your family. Instead, it had been his parents. Not because anyone planned it that way, but because they were the ones who actually showed up. In the days that followed, clips from the ceremony spread through our hometown. Friends congratulated me, old teachers reached out, and neighbors who'd known my family for years started asking my parents why they'd missed something so important. The story about the ski trip spread just as fast as the award itself. Even Ethan called. I didn't know they were skipping your ceremony, he admitted. If I had, I would have told them to stay home. I believe you, I said, and for once none of my frustration was aimed at him. He hadn't made that choice. My parents had. They kept calling over the following weeks, asking to meet, insisting it had all been a misunderstanding. I finally agreed to one conversation. My mother opened with, "We're embarrassed." I nodded. I was hurt. The difference sat heavy in the air between us. I spent years hoping that if I just worked hard enough, I'd eventually become your priority, I told her. I'm done waiting for that. There was nothing left to say. I wished them well, but made it clear my boundaries weren't up for negotiation anymore. The grant let me expand the community health programs that had inspired the nomination in the first place. What started as a handful of volunteer clinics grew into a network serving families who'd otherwise struggled to get care. When my residency began a few months later, the front row at the welcome ceremony was already full. Dr. Foster was there. His parents waved the second they spotted me. So did my closest friends and colleagues who'd become like family along the way. Every seat was filled by someone who had chosen to be there. My parents weren't among them. Walking forward in my white coat, I didn't bother looking toward the entrance. I already knew everyone who mattered was already in the room. I'd stopped waiting for the people who never showed up and built my life around the ones who always did.